Tonight, before you drift off to sleep, I would like to invite you on a very special journey. Not to distant lands, not to lost civilizations, and not even to the future of humanity, but rather a journey through something every one of us experiences every single day: time. Perhaps at some point you have wondered, why do some people remain healthy well into their 90s, 100 years old, or even beyond? Is the secret of longevity hidden in our genes, in our diet, in physical activity, or perhaps in something deeper that science is only beginning to understand? And deeper still, what truly creates a long life? According to Carl Gustav Jung, human beings do not simply fear death. What we truly fear is the feeling that time is quietly slipping away before we have fully lived. Because longevity is not merely the number of years we spend on this earth. It is also the quality of those years. It is the ability to walk beneath the morning sunlight, to share conversations with loved ones, to remain curious about life even after our hair has turned silver with age. In tonight's story, we will explore some of the most fascinating and relaxing truths about longevity. We will visit regions famous for their remarkable centenarians, discover why muscles, sleep, and daily movement matter so much, explore the longest living creatures on our planet, and learn about the latest scientific discoveries regarding aging, the brain, and the future of human lifespan. But above all, this is not a story about living as long as possible. It is a story about living as deeply as possible. Because sometimes, the greatest secret of longevity is not found inside modern laboratories, but within the simplest parts of everyday life: a good night's sleep, a warm meal, a friend to talk with, a reason to wake up each morning. If you enjoy slow-paced stories filled with knowledge, reflection, and insights into the human mind, please consider subscribing to Stories for Sleep. Your support helps us continue creating gentle journeys like this one, where each evening becomes an opportunity to explore both the world and ourselves. And now, adjust your pillow until it feels just right. Relax your shoulders, take a slow, gentle breath in, and join me as we begin our journey into the most remarkable secrets of human longevity. Part 1. The secret of longevity: genes or lifestyle. Tonight, as the world outside gradually grows quieter, perhaps this is the perfect moment to reflect on a question that has followed humanity since ancient times. A simpler question, yet one that contains the mystery of an entire lifetime. Why do some people remain healthy into their 90s, or even beyond 100 years of age, while others leave this world much earlier? What truly determines how long a person lives? Is the answer written into our DNA from the very moment we take our first breath? Or is it shaped by thousands of small choices made day after day? For centuries, people believed longevity was a gift of fate. Some seemed to be born with resilient bodies and extraordinary resistance to illness. Others carried inherited vulnerabilities that made life more challenging. That idea suggested the future had already been decided, that aging, health, and death were chapters written long before we arrived. But modern science tells a different story, a gentler story, and a more hopeful one. In studies that followed identical twins for decades, scientists discovered something remarkable. Two individuals with the same genes, the same facial features, the same eye color, and nearly identical biological traits. Yet after many decades, their health could look dramatically different. One might remain energetic, healthy, and mentally sharp at 80 years old, while the other struggles with disease much earlier in life. What created that difference? The answer lies in a place we often overlook, not in life's grand moments, not in dramatic decisions, but in small actions repeated day after day. According to Carl Gustav Jung, human beings often search for grand secrets to explain life. We are drawn to breakthrough discoveries, miracle pills, magical formulas, solutions that promise to change everything overnight. But reality is often much simpler. Longevity is not built in a single day. It is created little by little, like a forest growing from tiny seeds, like a river patiently carving stone over thousands of years. The world's longest living people rarely possess a special secret. They are not necessarily wealthier. They do not always have access to superior healthcare, and not all of them possess perfect genes. What they usually share are remarkably ordinary habits. They eat moderately. They move their bodies regularly. They do not smoke. They maintain close relationships. And perhaps most importantly, they have a reason to wake up each morning. When scientists study the world's famous longevity communities, they repeatedly encounter the same pattern. These individuals do not live as though they are trying to extend their lifespan. They are simply living more slowly, living more connected, living closer to nature, and living with a sense that each day matters. According to Jung, the human soul always needs direction, a purpose, something greater than itself toward which it can move. When people lose their sense of meaning, they do not only weaken psychologically, their bodies begin to suffer as well. Conversely, when each morning begins with the feeling that life still holds something worth anticipating, the entire inner system seems to function differently, more gently, more resiliently, more powerfully. Perhaps this is one of the most fascinating truths about longevity. The body and the mind are never truly separate. They are constantly communicating. A thought carried for many years can leave its mark upon the body. A small habit repeated thousands of times can shape the future of our health. A short daily walk may seem insignificant. A healthy meal may appear entirely ordinary. A full night's sleep may not feel extraordinary. Yet these small acts are like drops of water quietly nourishing the garden of longevity. They do not create miracles overnight, but over many years, they produce remarkable differences. And perhaps the most beautiful part is this: it means the future is not entirely beyond our reach. Genes may be the starting point, but lifestyle is the story we continue writing every day. Every step you take, every meal you choose, every person with whom you spend your time, every night of rest, all of these quietly contribute to the years ahead. Perhaps longevity is not a battle against time, but an art of cooperating with time, not an effort to live forever, but an effort to live long enough to enjoy life's beauty with a healthy body and a peaceful soul. And as we continue our journey through the mysteries of longevity tonight, perhaps the most important thing to remember is this: there is no magical secret, only small choices, simple habits, and quiet consistency across the years, like the stars shining above in the night sky, not because they burn brilliantly for a moment, but because they have been shining steadily for a very long time. Part 2. Movement, the best longevity medicine. After exploring the first secret of longevity together, we begin to realize something truly fascinating. Longevity is not a gift handed to us at birth, nor is it a mysterious number permanently carved into our genes. Instead, it is more like a garden cultivated through thousands of small choices made every day, every meal, every night's sleep, every conversation, every thought, and every step we place upon the earth. If the previous chapter showed us that genes are merely the beginning of the story, tonight we move deeper into one of the most remarkable gifts the human body possesses: its ability to transform itself through movement. At first, this may sound almost too simple. When people think about longevity, they often imagine complex genetic research, advanced medical technologies, or groundbreaking scientific discoveries. Yet, strangely enough, one of the most powerful influences on lifespan is something our ancestors have done for hundreds of thousands of years: to move, to walk, to carry, to climb, to work, and to remain naturally connected with their own bodies. According to Carl Gustav Jung, modern people often live too much inside their minds. We think, analyze, worry, predict, yet we grow increasingly disconnected from the body. In Modern Man in Search of a Soul, Jung wrote, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it. Perhaps the first thing we must accept is this: The body is not merely a machine for transporting the brain. The body is part of the soul itself. And when the body ceases to move, some of the deepest vitality within us gradually falls asleep. Imagine our ancient ancestors. A morning tens of thousands of years ago, the sun is rising. Dew still rests upon the grasslands. No one steps outside their shelter only to sit still for 8 hours. No one spends most of life in a chair. Life itself meant movement. Each day, people needed to find food, find water, travel, hunt, and build shelter. Our bodies were shaped within that environment. And even today, billions of cells within us still carry the biological memory of that era. Perhaps that is why movement often creates a feeling that is difficult to describe, a sensation of coming home. Not only are the muscles awakened, not only does the heart beat more strongly, but the entire inner system seems to come alive, especially when we consider muscle itself. Many people think muscles are simply about appearance, but longevity science tells a very different story. Researchers today often describe muscle as a kind of savings account for old age. When we are young, we rarely think about this. A staircase, a chair, a short walk, all seem effortless. But over time, the body begins to change. Muscle mass gradually declines. Strength slowly fades. Balance becomes less stable. And those seemingly small changes often determine quality of life in old age. Whether an 80-year-old can rise from a chair independently, walk to the market, care for themselves, or depend entirely upon others, that difference is often built decades earlier. Through every movement, every exercise session, every step taken. According to Jung, human beings naturally long for independence because it is a fundamental aspect of personal development. We want to make our own choices, walk on our own feet, care for ourselves. Perhaps that is why muscular strength is not merely biological. It is also connected to dignity, to freedom, to the feeling that we can continue living our own lives. And perhaps the most surprising truth is this: the secret of longevity is often not found in doing extraordinary things, but in doing ordinary things extraordinarily well, again and again, over many years. Part 3. The world's most famous longevity regions. After exploring the remarkable power of movement together, we begin to realize something fascinating. Longevity is not a secret hidden inside advanced laboratories, nor is it found entirely within futuristic anti-aging technologies. Instead, it often appears in things so simple that we easily overlook them. A morning walk, a small garden behind the house, a meal shared with family, a friend to talk with each day, or simply the feeling of knowing why you wake up each morning. In the previous chapter, we discovered that the human body was designed to move, that every step sends healing signals to trillions of cells within us. But another question naturally arises. If movement is so important, why do some places in the world produce far more long-lived people than others? Why are there villages where seeing someone in their 90s, or even over 100 years old, is perfectly ordinary? What is happening in these places? Do they possess a secret food, a magical source of water, or perhaps a unique genetic gift, unavailable to the rest of humanity? For many years, scientists wondered the same thing, and the more they investigated, the more they uncovered a truth that was both surprising and beautiful. The longest living people on Earth rarely follow a perfect formula. They do not count every calorie. They do not obsess over extreme diets. They do not spend their days worrying about health. Instead, they live in environments that allow the body and soul to function as nature originally intended. And perhaps this is the perfect moment for us to begin a gentle journey around the world, not in search of immortality, but in search of a deeper understanding of how human beings can live longer, healthier, and more peaceful lives. Our first destination is a small chain of islands surrounded by blue ocean in southern Japan, a place called Okinawa. Viewed from above, Okinawa appears as a collection of islands embraced by crystal-clear seas. Soft ocean breezes drift through gardens. Narrow roads wind between modest homes. And there, one often sees elderly men and women still tending gardens, walking through their communities, and sharing conversations long after reaching ages many societies consider exceptional. For years, Okinawa was known as one of the regions with the highest concentration of centenarians in the world. At first glance, the secret seems to be food. People here eat large amounts of vegetables, soy products, seaweed, and especially purple sweet potatoes. Simple foods, not expensive, not glamorous, yet deeply nourishing and closely connected to nature. However, if we focus only on food, we miss the most important lesson. Because what makes Okinawa remarkable is not merely what people eat, it is how they live. The Japanese have a famous concept called ikigai, often translated as a reason for being, or more simply, a reason to wake up in the morning. According to Carl Jung, one of the deepest needs of the human soul is the search for meaning. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung wrote, "The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it." Perhaps the people of Okinawa understand this truth naturally. They may not possess grand ambitions, but they have small reasons to keep living. A garden that needs tending, a friend to visit, a grandchild to love, a new day worth anticipating. And sometimes, those simple reasons become the fuel of longevity. Okinawa is also famous for its strong social connections. Older adults rarely live in isolation. They belong to long-standing circles of friends, small communities maintained for decades. According to Jung, human beings were never meant to exist alone. He once wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself." Perhaps this explains why meaningful relationships appear repeatedly in almost every longevity study ever conducted. Because the human heart needs more than blood to survive. It also needs connection. And from Japan, we continue our journey to Sardinia, Italy, a mountainous island in the heart of the Mediterranean. Sardinia is famous for a particularly unusual phenomenon. Its men live exceptionally long lives. In many parts of the world, women significantly outlive men. But in Sardinia, that gap is remarkably small. Researchers were initially puzzled. Then they noticed something important. Life here follows a different rhythm. People walk constantly, not because they are exercising, but because daily life naturally requires it. Steep hills, mountain roads, daily errands, all encourage continuous movement without ever requiring a gym membership. This is a fascinating pattern found in many longevity regions. People do not exercise. They simply live in ways that make movement unavoidable. And there is another important factor: family. In Sardinia, multiple generations often live close to one another. Grandparents, parents, children. An enduring network of support exists throughout life. Perhaps this benefits more than emotional well-being. Perhaps it benefits longevity itself. Because feeling loved and needed may be one of the most powerful medicines science has never been able to package into a bottle. And as the night grows deeper, we will continue our journey toward Ikaria in Greece and Nicoya in Costa Rica, places that remind us that the secret of longevity is rarely found in a single factor. Instead, it emerges from an entire ecosystem of living in harmony with the natural rhythm of being human. Part 4. The power of habits, purpose, and resilience. After visiting the world's most famous longevity regions from Okinawa in Japan, to Sardinia in Italy, to Ikaria in Greece, and Nicoya in Costa Rica, we begin to recognize something deeply interesting. The secret of longevity does not appear to reside in a miraculous food, nor in a mysterious gene, nor in a revolutionary scientific discovery. Instead, it appears within ordinary moments, waking up at the same time each morning, conversations with neighbors, familiar walks along familiar roads, simple tasks repeated every day, and deeper still, it appears in the way human beings respond to the unavoidable realities of life. Because when we look closely at people who live into their 90s and beyond, we discover something surprising. Most of them have not lived easy lives. Many have experienced war, loss, poverty, illness, and hardships capable of breaking almost anyone. Yet somehow, they continued walking forward. They continued finding reasons to smile. They continued believing in tomorrow. This brings us to one of the deepest secrets of longevity. Not the strength of the body, but the strength of recovery. According to Carl Gustav Jung, life is not a journey of avoiding suffering. It is a journey of transforming ourselves through suffering, in memories, dreams, reflections. He wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Perhaps this is the spirit shared by the world's longest living people. They are not immune to hardship. They are not protected from pain. They have simply learned how to rise again, and then rise again once more. If life were a forest, longevity would not belong to the tree that never encountered a storm. It would belong to the tree that survived countless storms and continued growing new leaves afterward. Modern science is beginning to arrive at a similar conclusion. Researchers studying centenarians have discovered that what makes them different is not that they experience fewer difficulties. In fact, many have endured extraordinary challenges: world wars, famine, the loss of loved ones, economic crisis, serious illness. Yet they possess a remarkable ability: resilience, the ability to return to balance after life's inevitable shocks. Like a bamboo branch bending in a powerful wind, it does not fight the storm. It does not remain rigid. It bends. It adapts. And when the storm finally passes, it stands upright once again. Perhaps this is the most beautiful image of longevity. Not invincibility, but flexibility. According to Jung, much of human suffering arises from resisting what cannot be changed. We want time to stop. We want youth to last forever. We want those we love to remain with us always. We want life to unfold exactly as we imagined, but life does not work that way. And it is precisely when we accept that reality that we become stronger. Jung famously observed, "What you resist persists." Perhaps long-lived people understand this naturally. They do not spend all their energy regretting the past, nor do they become consumed by fear of the future. Instead, they learn to live with what exists today, one day at a time, one step at a time, one breath at a time. And then there is another factor that appears repeatedly in nearly every longevity study ever conducted: purpose. If there is one question quietly hidden behind all research into longevity, perhaps it is this: what makes a person want to continue living? At first, the question seems simple, but it touches one of the deepest layers of the human soul, because longevity depends not only on how long the heart continues beating, but also on how meaningful life feels while it beats. In Okinawa, this idea is called ikigai, a reason to wake up every morning. Elsewhere in the world, it may carry different names, but the essence remains the same: a reason to keep moving forward. According to Jung, the least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it. Perhaps a person tending a small garden, a grandmother hoping to watch her grandchildren grow, an artisan still devoted to a beloved craft after decades. All are supported by meaning. And remarkably, meaning influences more than the mind. It influences biology as well. Modern research suggests that people with a strong sense of purpose often experience lower stress, less depression, healthier habits, and a lower risk of mortality over time. Meaning is not a miracle cure, but it functions like a lighthouse, helping people navigate through life's rough seas. And we begin to notice something else. Many centenarians maintain highly predictable daily routines. They wake at familiar times, eat regular meals, continue familiar activities. At first glance, this may seem boring, But in truth, the human body loves rhythm more than we realize. Our internal clocks seek patterns, just as the sun rises and sets, tides move in and out, and seasons continuously return. When life develops a clear rhythm, the body functions more efficiently, the mind becomes calmer, and perhaps longevity is not built from extraordinary actions, but from small actions repeated thousands of times: a consistent night's sleep, a short walk, a simple meal, a meaningful conversation, a reason to continue. If we step back and look at everything we have explored so far, genes, movement, longevity regions, and now resilience, a larger picture begins to emerge. Longevity is not a reward reserved for perfect people. More often, it belongs to those who adapt, those who rise again, those who love deeply, those who find meaning even during the most difficult chapters of life. And perhaps that is one of the most beautiful lessons centenarians quietly offer the rest of us. That humanity's greatest strength does not lie in avoiding every storm, but in continuing to bloom after the storm has passed. Part 5. Nutrition and Fasting in the Science of Longevity. After journeying together through the world's longevity regions and reflecting on the power of habits, purpose, and resilience in the face of adversity, we begin to recognize something fascinating. Longevity is not built by a single grand decision. It is shaped by thousands of small choices, choices that often seem ordinary: a walk, a good night's sleep, a conversation with a loved one, or even a meal. If previous chapters focused on the mind, on our ability to rise after life's challenges, and on the reasons that keep us moving forward, tonight we return to something closer: the body. Because no matter how strong the soul may be, it still requires a home. And that home is the body that accompanies us through every day of our lives. Interestingly, throughout human history, people have searched for the secret of long life through food. Emperors sent explorers across distant lands, seeking elixirs of immortality. Alchemists devoted entire lifetimes to discovering substances that might preserve youth forever. Even today, a global supplement industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars continues to thrive on that hope. Yet modern longevity science tells a much simpler story. The secret of nutrition is not found in a magical food. It lies in the body's remarkable ability to maintain balance. According to Carl Gustav Jung, one of the recurring symbols in the human psyche is moderation. He believed that true development does not emerge from extremes. It emerges from finding harmony between opposing forces. Perhaps the same is true for nutrition. The body does not require endless abundance. It requires balance. And sometimes, the best thing we can give the body is not more, but the wisdom to stop. Before we explore larger ideas such as calorie restriction and intermittent fasting, let us begin somewhere few people think about when discussing longevity: the mouth. At first, this may sound surprising. What could teeth and gums possibly have to do with living a long life? Yet the more scientists investigate, the more they discover that oral health serves as a gateway to overall health. Inflamed gums are not merely a dental problem. They are often signs of inflammation elsewhere in the body, and chronic inflammation has been linked to cardiovascular disease, stroke, diabetes, and many other chronic conditions. Perhaps this reminds us of a profound truth. The body does not function as separate kingdoms. There is no dental kingdom isolated from the heart, no digestive kingdom independent from the brain. Everything is connected, like a forest ecosystem. When one part becomes imbalanced, the effects spread throughout the whole. According to Jung, modern people often divide reality into separate pieces, but the essence of life is connection. Perhaps longevity follows the same principle. It is not found within a single organ. It emerges from harmony across the entire system. From oral health, we arrive at a discovery that has fascinated scientists for decades: calorie restriction. In numerous animal studies, from tiny worms and fruit flies to certain primates reducing calorie intake while maintaining proper nutrition, has often produced a remarkable result. Lifespans increase, aging slows, resistance to disease improves. At first glance, this seems counterintuitive. We tend to assume that more food means more health. Yet nature is more subtle than that. When energy becomes slightly less abundant, the body activates ancient survival mechanisms. Mechanisms shaped through millions of years of evolution. Instead of focusing primarily on growth, the body shifts toward maintenance. It repairs, it cleans, it recycles, it preserves. There is something beautiful about this image. Like an old house, when its owner stops obsessing over building new rooms, attention can finally return to the roof, the walls, the windows, and the forgotten details that need care. The body behaves similarly. It uses moments of quiet to restore itself. And from here, we arrive at a concept frequently discussed in modern longevity research: intermittent fasting. For many people, fasting sounds like deprivation, but biologically speaking, periods without food are not simply moments when the body receives less nourishment. They are opportunities for deep maintenance. One of the most famous processes activated during fasting is called autophagy. The word comes from Greek and literally means self-eating. It sounds alarming, yet in reality, it is an extraordinarily intelligent process. The body identifies damaged proteins, worn-out cellular components, inefficient structures, and recycles them into useful raw materials. Imagine the body as a vast city. Autophagy is the night crew. While everything appears quiet on the surface, millions of microscopic workers are busy collecting waste and repairing infrastructure. This brings to mind one of Jung's most insightful observations. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. In some ways, autophagy mirrors that principle. The body does not become healthier by endlessly accumulating more. It becomes healthier by clearing away what is no longer needed. And perhaps the same is true of life itself, because it is not only the body that accumulates, the mind accumulates as well. Old worries, painful memories, lingering fears, habits that no longer serve us. Perhaps maturity means learning how to release some of these burdens, creating space for something new to grow. Interestingly, people who live long lives are rarely obsessed with longevity. They seldom wake each morning asking, "How can I live 10 more years?" Instead, they focus on a different question: how can I live well today? And perhaps that is the most important message of longevity science. The goal is not merely to live longer. The goal is to live better, healthy enough to walk beneath the morning sun, read a favorite book, play with grandchildren, care for a small garden, and appreciate life's simple pleasures. Because a long life filled with suffering may not be a gift, while a healthy, alert, and meaningful life is what most of us truly desire. According to Jung, human development is not a journey toward perfection. It is a journey toward wholeness. Perhaps longevity follows the same path, not extending life at any cost, but helping body and soul remain in harmony for as long as possible. And as the night grows deeper, we begin to realize that nutrition is not a story about extreme diets. It is a story about balance. Fasting is not about punishing the body. It is about giving the body an opportunity to rest and repair. And longevity is not a race against time. It is the art of caring for the life already present within us, day after day, quietly, like a garden continuing to grow beneath the gentle moonlight of tonight. Part 6. The physical abilities that matter most as we age. After exploring nutrition, intermittent fasting, and the remarkable repair mechanisms unfolding within trillions of cells, we begin to view longevity from a different perspective. Not as a competition to accumulate more years, but as an art of preserving the quality of those years. Because ultimately, what most people truly want is not simply to reach 100 years of age. What they want is to keep walking on their own feet, to open the front door each morning, to embrace loved ones, to watch a sunrise and still experience wonder with a clear and attentive mind. Naturally, another question emerges. What truly determines quality of life as we grow older? Is it blood pressure, cholesterol, complex medical tests that only doctors understand? All of these matter, but modern longevity science is increasingly paying attention to something else. Basic physical abilities. Abilities so ordinary that most young people rarely think about them. The ability to maintain balance. The ability to react quickly. The ability to bend down and stand up again. The ability to grasp an object firmly. The ability to remain flexible. And even the ability to recognize thirst. These seemingly simple capacities quietly determine how we experience the final decades of life. According to Carl Gustav Jung, much of life involves learning to live in harmony with nature's rhythms. He once wrote, "Nature is not matter only, she is also spirit." Perhaps the human body is part of that living nature. And as we age, nature does not ask us to become stronger than before. It simply asks us to preserve what truly matters. One of the most important of these abilities is balance. Imagine an 80-year-old walking down a staircase. For a young person, this action happens almost automatically. But for an older adult, each step requires an extraordinary coordination between the nervous system, muscles, the inner ear, vision, reflexes, and balance mechanisms. A tiny disruption, a slight slip, a brief moment of instability, and life can change dramatically. Many studies show that falls are among the leading causes of declining quality of life in older adults. Not necessarily because the fall itself is fatal, but because of what follows: broken bones, reduced confidence, less movement, and sometimes the loss of independence. Yet there is encouraging news. Balance can be trained. Tai Chi, standing on one leg, heel to two, walking. All of these activities become quiet conversations between the brain and the body. Each practice session teaches the nervous system a little more. Like an old musician carefully tuning a beloved instrument, there is something deeply meditative about such exercises. No speed, no competition, only awareness, attention, and connection to movement itself. According to Jung, true maturity is not about becoming faster. It is about becoming more conscious. Perhaps balance carries a similar symbolic meaning, not merely keeping the body from falling, but keeping life from becoming unbalanced, keeping the soul steady amidst the inevitable changes brought by time. And as the night continues, we begin to understand something beautiful. Healthy aging is not measured by how fast we move. It is measured by how gracefully we continue moving through life. Perhaps that is the most beautiful image of longevity. Not simply living longer, but continuing to live fully, even as the hair turns silver and the years quietly pass by. Part 7. Stress, Friendship, and Purpose. After exploring the physical factors that influence aging, from balance and reflexes to flexibility and the simple strength of a handshake, we begin to recognize something fascinating. Longevity is not merely a story of muscles, not only of bones and joints, not only of the heart or the numbers that appear on medical reports, because the human body has never functioned like a simple machine. It is a living ecosystem, a place where every thought can influence cells, where every emotion can leave traces upon biology, and where invisible forces often possess greater power than anything the eyes can see. If the previous chapter explored what helps us remain steady on our feet, tonight we journey deeper into what helps the soul remain steady. For there is a curious paradox within longevity science. A person may possess a healthy body, eat well, exercise regularly, and yet decline surprisingly quickly if they live in loneliness, chronic stress, and a loss of direction. On the other hand, some people endure extraordinary hardships and still preserve remarkable strength. What creates this difference? According to Carl Gustav Jung, the answer does not lie entirely within the body. It lies within the relationship between body, mind, and meaning. Perhaps this is where we enter one of the deepest subjects in our entire journey through longevity: stress, friendship, and purpose. Invisible forces capable of shaping an entire lifetime. When we hear the word stress, many of us imagine discomfort, a temporary pressure, a difficult day at work, an argument, an unpaid bill. But the body sees stress differently. To the nervous system, stress is a signal that survival may be under threat. The moment that signal appears, the body activates an ancient chain of responses forged through millions of years of evolution. The heart beats faster, breathing becomes quicker, muscles tighten, hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline flood the bloodstream. In the short term, this response is incredibly useful. It helped our ancestors escape predators, react to danger, and survive. The problem in the modern world is that many people live in a state of constant alarm, not because a tiger is waiting outside the cave, but because of work pressures, financial worries, strained relationships, uncertainty about the future, and countless thoughts that never truly rest. Day after day, year after year, the body remains prepared for battle, even when no battle exists, and this is where chronic stress begins to leave its mark. Modern research shows that prolonged stress is associated with chronic inflammation, persistently elevated cortisol, weakened immunity, sleep disturbances, and even accelerated biological aging. In other words, time is measured not only by calendars, it is also measured by how the body responds to life. According to Jung, one of the deepest sources of stress does not come from circumstances themselves. It comes from division within, when different parts of the soul no longer move in harmony, when external life travels in one direction while the heart longs for another. In Modern Man in Search of a Soul, Jung wrote, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases." Perhaps much of our stress emerges when we attempt to live according to lives that do not truly belong to us, when we strive to become the person others expect, while a deeper part of ourselves quietly longs for something different. Yet there is something remarkable. There is one factor that appears to protect people from the effects of stress more powerfully than most imagine: friendship, connection, the feeling of belonging. In study after study of longevity, strong social relationships appear again and again. Scientists have discovered that social isolation may affect longevity to a degree comparable to smoking, physical inactivity, and several other major health risks. At first, this sounds astonishing. How could a conversation influence lifespan? How could a friend affect health? Yet upon reflection, it makes perfect sense. Human beings never evolved to live alone. Our ancestors survived through communities, families, tribes, cooperation. The feeling of connection does not merely comfort the soul. It also sends signals of safety to the nervous system, signals that say, "You are not alone. Help exists if needed. There is still somewhere to belong." Jung once wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." Perhaps this is why the quality of relationships matters more than quantity. A sincere conversation, a person who truly listens, a friendship that endures across decades. Sometimes these things are worth more than hundreds of shallow connections. And now we arrive at one of the greatest secrets of longevity: purpose. If there is one factor that appears almost everywhere among the world's longest-lived populations, it may be this. People who live long lives usually have a reason to wake up in the morning. It does not need to be grand. It does not need to change the world. Sometimes it is simply tending a garden, meeting dear friends, reading a beloved book, teaching grandchildren, or watching the sunrise. But there is a reason, a direction, a sense that tomorrow still holds something worth anticipating. According to Jung, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. perhaps longevity is not merely biological. Perhaps it is also the result of discovering what makes life meaningful. Because purpose does more than reduce stress. It helps people maintain healthy habits, rise after setbacks, continue moving forward during life's most difficult chapters. And interestingly, the brain responds as well. People who continue learning, continue exploring, continue trying new things, often build what scientists call cognitive reserve, like a library growing richer over time. A brain that remains curious creates new neural connections that help preserve adaptability as the years pass. Learning a new language, playing a musical instrument, dancing, painting, or simply remaining curious about the world. All of these are gifts offered to the future brain. And as the night outside grows quieter, perhaps we begin to understand that longevity is not built solely through what we eat or how we exercise. It is also built through the people we love, the things that move our hearts, the reasons we continue stepping forward. Because in the end, human beings do not live by cells alone. We live by meaning. And perhaps one of the most beautiful secrets of longevity is this: when life contains something worth loving, something worth learning, and something worth waiting for, both body and soul seem to wish to remain here a little longer upon this extraordinary journey called life. Part 8. Sleep, nature's anti-aging medicine. After traveling together through the deeper landscapes of the human mind, exploring stress, friendship, social connection, and purpose, we begin to realize that longevity is not determined solely by what happens inside the body. It is also shaped by what happens within the soul. A person may possess a healthy heart, strong muscles, excellent medical results, but if the mind remains constantly tense, alert, and unable to truly rest, the body will eventually pay the price. And this brings us to one of nature's most extraordinary gifts, an activity that occupies nearly 1/3 of our lives, a state that appears passive, yet is profoundly active at the biological level: sleep. If movement is the longevity medicine of daylight, then sleep may be the longevity medicine of the night. For centuries, people viewed sleep as a period of inactivity, a pause between 2 days, a dark space between waking hours. Yet modern science tells a very different story. When we sleep, the brain does not truly rest. The body does not truly stop working. Quite the opposite. This is when some of the most important processes begin. Imagine a city at night. The streets become quiet. Lights gradually disappear from office windows. Yet behind that stillness, countless essential tasks are underway. Maintenance crews repair roads. Systems are inspected. Waste is removed. Damage is repaired. The human body behaves in much the same way. During the deepest stages of sleep, it begins the work of healing itself. Perhaps this is why sleep is not merely rest, it is renewal. According to Carl Gustav Jung, sleep and dreams occupied a special place within psychological life. He viewed dreams as a doorway into the depths of the unconscious. In Man and His Symbols, Jung wrote, "The dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul." Perhaps Jung was speaking about more than psychology. In some way, his words reflect what modern science is now discovering. That during sleep, we enter another world, a world where body and mind quietly perform their most important work. One of sleep's first tasks is memory consolidation. Throughout the day, the brain receives countless pieces of information: faces, conversations, emotions, experiences. If the brain is a vast library, daytime is when books constantly arrive. Nighttime is when the librarians begin organizing them. What should be preserved? What should be discarded? What belongs in long-term memory? Because of this, we do not merely remember, we learn, and there is something extraordinary about that. Every good night's sleep does more than restore us. It quietly transforms us into a slightly different version of ourselves by morning. Yet this is only the beginning. Beneath memory lie even deeper processes: While we sleep, damaged proteins are replaced, DNA damage is repaired, the immune system is recalibrated, muscles recover, and countless cellular maintenance tasks unfold. These processes occur so quietly that we never notice them, yet they profoundly influence the pace of aging itself. Perhaps the greatest lesson sleep offers is this: growth does not always require action. Sometimes growth requires rest, stillness, and letting go. In a world that constantly celebrates productivity, this may be one of the most important lessons of all. As the night deepens around us, we begin to realize something gentle and beautiful. Sleep is not time lost, it is time invested. Each night of restorative sleep is like placing a small deposit into the health account of the future. Not dramatic, not immediate, but powerful through years of accumulation. And perhaps, among all the secrets of longevity we have explored so far, this is one of the gentlest. Sometimes the best thing we can do for the body is not to try harder, but to allow ourselves to rest, to surrender to sleep, and to trust that within that peaceful darkness, trillions of cells continue their quiet work of preserving life, like devoted gardeners tending a garden beneath moonlight, so that when morning comes, everything may bloom once again. Part 9. The Science of Aging Inside the Human Body. After traveling together through the quiet landscapes of sleep, we begin to sense a beautiful truth, that every good night's sleep does more than help us feel refreshed the next morning. It is part of an ongoing conversation between the body and time itself. Within the gentle darkness of the night, trillions of cells continue their work. They repair, they rebuild, they reorganize what has worn down throughout the day. Sleep is like the maintenance crew of a vast city, a city that never truly stops functioning. But then a natural question arises. If the body is constantly repairing itself, if nature has equipped us with so many remarkable defense mechanisms, why do human beings still grow old? Why does hair gradually turn silver? Why do wrinkles begin to appear? Why do strength, speed, and memory slowly change with the passing years? This is one of humanity's oldest questions, a question that has occupied philosophers, puzzled alchemists, and inspired modern biologists to dedicate entire careers to understanding it. Yet what is fascinating is that modern science no longer views aging as a simple process. There is no single secret clock counting down inside the body, no hidden switch that suddenly turns on at 40 or 50 years of age. Instead, aging resembles a vast symphony composed of thousands of small changes unfolding simultaneously. Some occur within DNA, some take place inside mitochondria, others involve the immune system, and still others emerge from aging cells quietly accumulating over time. Together, these countless changes create what we call aging. According to Carl Gustav Jung, time is not merely the transformation of the body, it is also the maturation of the soul. In Modern Man in Search of a Soul, he wrote, "Life really does begin at 40. Up until then, you are just doing research." Of course, Jung was not speaking about biology. He was speaking about psychological development, yet his words offer an intriguing perspective. Perhaps aging is not simply a process of losing. Perhaps it is also a process of transformation, a journey in which body and soul evolve together. To understand this, let us begin at the smallest level, Kurna. If the body were a vast library, DNA would be the collection of instruction manuals stored within every cell. Each cell carries a blueprint for life. Every process, from building muscle and producing blood to repairing tissues and supporting the brain, depends upon the information stored there. But no book can survive forever without wear. Over the years, DNA is continuously exposed to sunlight, natural chemical reactions, environmental pollutants, biological stress, and countless other influences. Fortunately, the body possesses extraordinarily sophisticated repair systems. Every day, thousands of DNA injuries are detected and corrected, yet Not every repair is perfect. Some tiny errors remain, little by little, year after year, like hairline cracks forming in an ancient cathedral. At first, they are almost invisible, but over time, they accumulate. And this is one chapter in the story of aging. But DNA is not the only character in this story. Hidden deep within our cells are tiny structures called mitochondria. Earlier in our journey, we referred to them as the power plants of the cell, and that description remains remarkably accurate. Every heartbeat, every step, every thought requires energy produced by these microscopic power stations. When we are young, they operate with astonishing efficiency, producing abundant energy, responding quickly to the body's needs. But as the years pass, many mitochondria begin to lose efficiency. Some function less effectively, others generate more damaging byproducts, and gradually, the body's energy is no longer as abundant as it once was. Perhaps this helps explain why many older adults often describe feeling exactly the same person on the inside, yet discovering that their bodies no longer respond quite as quickly as before. Not because their willpower has weakened, but because the power plants within them have changed. This brings to mind one of Jung's most profound observations. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Perhaps modern longevity science is engaged in a similar journey, a journey inward, deeper than organs, deeper than tissues, into the smallest structures that make life possible. And there we encounter another character, more subtle, harder to notice, yet enormously influential. Chronic inflammation. Scientists often refer to this phenomenon as inflammaging, a combination of the words inflammation and aging. When we are young, inflammation serves as a protective mechanism. You get injured, the body launches an inflammatory response. Immune cells arrive, tissues are repaired, everything functions beautifully. But over time, the body sometimes maintains a low level of persistent inflammation, not intense enough to cause acute illness, yet sufficient to slowly wear down biological systems. Like a tiny flame, never raging into an inferno, yet burning continuously for years. That flame can influence the cardiovascular system, the brain, metabolism, immunity, and many other organs. And perhaps the most remarkable discovery is this. Many of the longevity factors we have already explored throughout this journey help calm that invisible fire. Sleep, movement, nutrition, meaningful relationships, stress management, all contribute to soothing the slow-burning flame of inflammaging. And perhaps this is one of the most hopeful lessons in the science of aging. While we cannot stop time itself, we can influence how gracefully our bodies travel through it. Part 12. The brain and longevity. After listening together to the quiet rhythm of the heart, exploring the rivers of blood flowing through tens of thousands of miles of vessels within the body, and discovering how the strength of our muscles shapes the quality of old age, we begin to realize something profound. Longevity is not only the story of the body, it is also the story of consciousness. For a healthy heart may help us live longer, but what allows that life to remain meaningful? What enables us to remember the names of those we love? To recognize the faces of our grandchildren? To feel joy when sunlight touches the morning sky? To be moved by a familiar melody? The answer lies within an organ that weighs only about 3 pounds. Yet it may be the most complex structure nature has ever created, the brain. If the heart is the engine of life, then the brain is the storyteller of life. Every memory, every emotion, every dream, every hope, every sorrow is woven into this extraordinary network of neurons. And perhaps that is why, when people think about aging, what they fear most is often not gray hair, not wrinkles, but the possibility of losing themselves, losing their memories, losing the stories that shaped the person they have become. Carl Gustav Jung devoted much of his life to understanding the human mind. He believed that beneath our everyday awareness lay deeper layers of the psyche. In memories, dreams, reflections, he wrote, The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it. Perhaps when we speak about the brain and longevity, we are also speaking about preserving that sense of meaning. Because living longer is not merely about adding years, it is about maintaining the ability to experience those years fully. One of the most thought-provoking discoveries of modern science is the connection between depression and longevity. For centuries, sadness was viewed primarily as an emotional experience, something belonging to the realm of feelings. Today, scientists understand that depression affects far more than mood. It influences the entire body. A person living with chronic depression often experiences higher levels of inflammation, elevated cortisol, poorer sleep quality, reduced physical activity, and weaker social connections. Each of these factors is directly linked to longevity. This reveals an important truth. The boundary between physical health and mental health is far thinner than we once imagined. Body and mind are not separate entities. They are two currents of the same river. When one suffers, the other feels the consequences. Jung once wrote, "Depression is like a woman in black. If she turns up, don't shoo her away. Invite her in, offer her a seat, treat her like a guest, and listen to what she wants to say." This is not an invitation to surrender to sadness. It is a reminder that healing often begins with understanding. Perhaps longevity follows the same principle, not a battle against every weakness, but a journey of learning to listen to ourselves. Yet among all the challenges of aging, there is one discovery that offers immense hope. For much of the 20th century, many scientists believed that the adult brain was largely fixed. They assumed that neurons simply declined with age and that little could be done about it. Today, we know the story is far more hopeful. The brain possesses a remarkable ability known as neuroplasticity, the ability to reorganize, to learn, to adapt. Even at 70, 80, or 90 years old, the brain can still create new neural pathways. This is astonishing, because it means growth does not end when we grow older. A person can learn to play the piano at 60, study a new language at 70, begin painting at 80, and the brain will continue responding to those experiences, like an ancient forest still capable of forming new pathways through its trees. Perhaps this is one of the most beautiful messages in the science of longevity. We grow older, but we do not necessarily stop growing. Jung once said, "Life does not require us to be the best, only that we try our best." Perhaps the brain responds to this spirit, not perfection, not genius, simply curiosity, a willingness to keep learning, to continue expanding the inner world. And when speaking of the aging brain, we inevitably encounter a subject that worries many people: dementia. What is fascinating is that dementia rarely arises from a single cause. Rather, it resembles many rivers converging into one: high blood pressure, poor sleep, hearing loss, physical inactivity, diabetes, social isolation, all contribute to the risk, which means that caring for the brain does not begin in old age. It begins today, with how we sleep, how we move, how we connect with others, and even with seemingly small things, such as hearing the sounds of life clearly. Many studies suggest that untreated hearing loss is associated with a higher risk of cognitive decline. At first glance, this may seem surprising, but the deeper we think about it, the more sense it makes. When hearing becomes difficult, the brain must work harder to decode sounds. Conversations become more challenging. People gradually withdraw from social interactions, and over time, that isolation can affect cognitive health. It reminds us that the brain does not exist alone. It needs the world. It needs sound. It needs conversation. It needs stories. It needs people. And perhaps that is why those who remain curious and socially engaged often maintain their mental sharpness for longer. Yet science opens another surprising door, a door leading downward, past the brain, into the stomach, into the gut. For many years, the gut was viewed simply as a digestive organ. Today, scientists sometimes call it something else: the second brain. Within the digestive tract lives a vast community of trillions of microorganisms, an ecosystem so complex that the number of bacterial cells is nearly comparable to the number of human cells in the body. This microbiome influences metabolism, immunity, inflammation, and even mood. A large portion of serotonin, the neurotransmitter associated with happiness and well-being, is produced within the gut. It sounds almost unbelievable, yet it reminds us of a profound truth. Human beings are not isolated entities. We are ecosystems, living communities composed of trillions of cells and microorganisms, working together to create the experience we call self. And as the night grows quieter beyond the window, perhaps we begin to understand that brain longevity is not determined by any single factor. There is no miracle pill, no secret formula, only thousands of small choices. A restful night's sleep, a daily walk, a nourishing meal, a friend to talk with, a book to learn from, a reason to wake up tomorrow. And perhaps that is the most beautiful thing about the brain. It never truly stops changing, never stops adapting, never stops learning. Even as we grow older, even as time continues its steady march forward, for deep within, the brain still carries the most ancient longing of all living things. The longing to keep exploring, to keep connecting, and to keep searching for meaning in the extraordinary journey we call life. Part 13. Biological rhythms and the timing of eating. After journeying together through the remarkable labyrinth of the brain, exploring how memories are formed, how emotions influence longevity, and how trillions of microorganisms in our gut quietly communicate with our minds every day, we begin to realize something fascinating. Human beings are not shaped only by what we eat, not only by what we think, not only by the genes inherited from our parents. We are also shaped by when we do these things. The time we wake up, the time we greet the morning sunlight, the time we move our bodies, the time we eat, and the time we surrender to sleep. If the previous chapter helped us understand that the brain is a delicate ecosystem, this chapter takes us toward an even deeper discovery, that the entire body operates according to an invisible rhythm, a rhythm older than civilization, older than religion, and perhaps older than humanity itself. It is the rhythm of the sun, the rhythm of day and night, the rhythm of light and darkness. Scientists call it the circadian rhythm, an invisible clock etched into every cell of the body through millions of years of evolution. Today, we often imagine ourselves living in a world governed by digital clocks, smartphones, calendars, time zones, meetings, reminders. Yet deep within us, the body is still listening to another clock, a clock that does not care whether today is Monday or Sunday, a clock that knows nothing of Google calendars or work schedules. It only knows sunrise and sunset. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order." Perhaps our biological rhythm is one of those secret orders, a silent system operating beneath every moment of life. When dawn arrives and light touches the retina, a signal is sent to the brain, not merely a signal of sight, but a signal of time, an ancient message declaring, a new day has begun. Immediately, countless biological processes awaken. Cortisol naturally rises, body temperature begins to increase, alertness gradually returns. Metabolic hormones adjust themselves, like a city slowly waking after a long night. Roads become busier, machines begin to hum, energy starts to flow. What is remarkable is that morning sunlight does not merely help us wake up, it also helps determine how well we sleep later that night. It sounds paradoxical, yet tonight's sleep begins with this morning's light. People who regularly expose themselves to natural morning sunlight tend to fall asleep more easily, sleep more deeply, and maintain a more stable biological clock. Each morning is like winding an ancient clock, a daily reset, a reminder of where we stand within the great cycle of time. Perhaps this explains why so many ancient cultures held deep reverence for the sun, not only because it brought light, not only because it sustained life, but because human intuition long sensed that we belong to these natural cycles. Yet modern life has introduced something entirely new: artificial light. For the first time in our evolutionary history, humans can transform night into day. We work beneath bright lights, eat beneath bright lights, stare at glowing screens beneath bright lights, and sometimes the brain becomes confused. It is no longer certain whether the sun has truly set, especially when exposed to the blue light emitted by phones, computers, and electronic devices. This type of light strongly influences melatonin production, the hormone, often called the gatekeeper of sleep. When melatonin is delayed, sleep is delayed. Circadian rhythms drift out of alignment, like an orchestra slowly falling out of sync. At first, the disruption is subtle, but over time, the consequences begin to appear. This brings us to a topic that seems ordinary at first glance, yet may profoundly influence longevity: the timing of eating. For many years, nutritional science focused primarily on one question: what do we eat? How many calories? How much protein? How much fat? Today, researchers are asking another question: when do we eat? And surprisingly, that question may be more important than many people realize. Imagine the body as a factory. Daytime is its primary work shift. Insulin functions more efficiently. Digestive organs operate more actively. Energy is processed more effectively. As night falls, however, the body gradually shifts into repair mode. It wants to rest, to restore, to prepare for tomorrow. But when we consume a large meal late at night, the factory must reopen. Production lines return to work. Hormones become disrupted. Blood sugar fluctuates. Repair processes are interrupted. This is why many modern studies suggest that eating very late at night is associated with impaired blood sugar regulation, reduced insulin sensitivity, increased metabolic risk, and poorer sleep quality. This does not mean that an occasional late-night meal is harmful, but when it becomes a habit sustained over many years, the biological clock begins to pay the price. Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Perhaps the body communicates in a similar way. Morning fatigue, difficulty sleeping, unexpected hunger, late-night cravings. Sometimes these are not signs of weak willpower. They may simply be messages from the biological clock trying to speak to us. And when we learn to listen, we begin to understand that health is not only about food or exercise. It is also about timing, the right moment, the right rhythm, the harmony between the body and nature. Nowhere is the power of circadian rhythm more evident than in those who work through the night. Nurses, doctors on overnight shifts, factory workers, security personnel, pilots, people whose work unfolds while much of the world sleeps. Their contributions are essential, yet they face a unique biological challenge, because the body still remembers that night was designed for rest, while their work requires wakefulness, and this conflict creates long-term consequences. Research suggests that prolonged night shift work is associated with higher risks of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, metabolic disorders, and even depression, not because these individuals are doing anything wrong, but because they are living against the ancient clock embedded within the body. And perhaps that is one of the deepest lessons of this chapter. Human beings are not separate from nature. No matter how tall our buildings become, no matter how brightly we illuminate the night, no matter how advanced our technology grows, deep within, the body is still listening to the sun, still listening to dawn, still listening to darkness, still living according to rhythms that existed long before civilization itself. And perhaps the secret of longevity does not lie in defeating time, but in learning how to live in harmony with its rhythm. Part 14. Breakthroughs in the science of anti-aging. after discovering the invisible clock that quietly governs every cell in the body, after realizing that morning sunlight can influence sleep many hours later, and after understanding that longevity depends not only on what we eat but also on when we eat, we begin to see the body differently, no longer as a simple machine, no longer as a collection of bones, muscles, and blood, but as a miniature universe, a living ecosystem where trillions of cells continuously communicate with one another, a biological symphony in which every hormone, every nerve signal, and every heartbeat contributes to the music. And as we gain a deeper appreciation for this complexity, an almost unavoidable question emerges. Can humans slow aging? Can science extend youthfulness? Might there come a day when we can remain healthy for far longer than we do now? These are not new questions. For thousands of years, people have searched for a fountain of youth. Emperors sent explorers across the world, seeking immortality. Alchemists devoted entire lifetimes to uncovering the secret of eternal life. Legends of longevity appear in nearly every civilization. Yet something extraordinary is happening today. For the first time in history, these questions are no longer confined to myth. They have become serious subjects of scientific inquiry. If the 20th century was the Archer's age in which humanity learned to fight infectious disease, the 21st century may become the age in which humanity learns to understand aging itself, not in pursuit of immortality, but in pursuit of health span, the period of life spent healthy, independent, and mentally sharp, because ultimately, the goal is not simply to live longer, it is to live longer with dignity, freedom, and vitality. Carl Jung once wrote, "The future is prepared in the unconscious, long before it becomes conscious." Perhaps the same is true of anti-aging science. The breakthroughs emerging today did not appear overnight. They were prepared through decades of quiet research in laboratories around the world, like seeds resting beneath the soil long before they emerge into sunlight. One of the most remarkable discoveries is the concept of biological age. For most of history, age was measured in only one way: the number of years since birth, 30, 50, 70. But modern science suggests that two people of the same chronological age may be aging at very different rates. One 60-year-old may possess the health profile of someone 10 years younger. Another may carry biological markers more typical of someone much older. This realization gave rise to the idea of epigenetic clocks, tools designed to estimate the age of our cells rather than the age printed on our birth certificates. If chronological age is the number of years a book has existed, biological age reflects how worn its pages have become. And this is where things become truly fascinating. Research suggests that biological age is not entirely fixed. It can accelerate or slow down, depending on how we live. These discoveries are transforming the way humanity thinks about aging. Aging is no longer viewed as a simple process beyond influence. Instead, it appears as a complex system that can gradually be understood. Another exciting field of research is known as senolytics. Within each of us exist aging cells, cells that no longer function efficiently, yet refuse to disappear. Scientists call them senescent cells. Imagine a city where certain factories have stopped producing goods, yet continue occupying valuable space. Worse still, they release signals that affect the surrounding neighborhood. As the years pass, more of these inactive factories accumulate, and the city begins to function less efficiently. The goal of senolytics is to selectively remove these cells, like clearing abandoned buildings to create space for healthier activity. The field remains young, yet it offers an entirely new perspective on aging, not merely as wear and tear, but as the accumulation of elements that no longer serve the body. Curiously, this resembles a familiar theme in Jungian psychology. Jung believed that maturity is not only about accumulation, it is also about learning to let go, letting go of old roles, old beliefs, old burdens that are no longer needed. Perhaps the body is attempting something similar, And that brings us to one of the most elegant mechanisms discovered in biology: autophagy, a term that sounds complex, yet describes something beautifully simple: the cell's ability to clean itself, to remove damaged components, to recycle old materials, to make room for renewal, like clearing a room after years of accumulated clutter, or allowing the mind to release what no longer serves it. In a world that constantly encourages us to accumulate more, autophagy reminds us of the value of letting go. Sometimes health comes not from adding more, but from knowing what must be released. And then there is a technology that feels almost like science fiction: CRISPR, gene editing. For the first time in history, humanity possesses a tool capable of editing the biological code of life itself. It is as though we have learned to revise individual sentences within the instruction manual of the body. Of course, profound scientific and ethical questions remain, yet its potential is extraordinary. Perhaps the greatest miracle is not the editing of genes, but the fact that we have learned to read the language nature has been writing for billions of years. The language of DNA, the language that tells the story of every living creature on Earth. And when we look at all these breakthroughs, from epigenetic clocks to senolytics, autophagy, and CRISPR, we begin to recognize something important. Anti-aging science is not truly a war against old age. It is a journey toward understanding old age, understanding the body, understanding time, understanding life itself. For the deeper scientists look, the clearer it becomes that aging is not a single enemy. It is a vast symphony, composed of thousands of biological processes. And perhaps the true wonder does not lie in defeating time, but in using knowledge to help human beings live their years more fully, more meaningfully, and more humanely. Part 15: The Future of Longevity, and the final lesson. After journeying together through some of the most advanced laboratories of the 21st century, after exploring biological clocks capable of measuring the true age of our cells, promising gene editing technologies, artificial intelligence systems learning to detect disease before humans can, and bold research aimed at extending youthfulness within the body, we begin to sense an atmosphere that feels both extraordinary and strangely familiar. Extraordinary because of what science is achieving, yet familiar because behind all these breakthroughs, the central question remains unchanged: how can we live a longer life? And perhaps even more importantly, how can we live a deeper life? It is a question humanity has carried for thousands of years. Kings once searched for elixirs of immortality. Alchemists dreamed of eternal life. Philosophers debated the meaning of time. And today, scientists use microscopes, supercomputers, and artificial intelligence to continue the same search. Yet the further science travels, the more it seems to return to a simple truth. Longevity is not built only in laboratories. It is built in everyday life, in small things, in repeated habits, in the way we treat our bodies, and in the way we care for our own souls. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." Perhaps after this entire exploration of longevity, this is the moment to look inward, not to discover a magical secret, but to realize that the most valuable things are often right in front of us. When researchers imagine the future of longevity, they do not think only about medicine and technology. They also think about cities, because it turns out that where we live can profoundly influence how many healthy years we enjoy. Imagine a city designed for health, a place filled with green parks, wide walking paths, public squares where people gather, rows of trees that cool the summer heat, neighborhoods where children can play safely, spaces that encourage people to step outside, to walk, to connect, to slow down. This is what many urban planners call a longevity city, a concept receiving increasing attention as the world's population ages. Interestingly, these cities do not promise immortality. They simply make healthy choices easier, because sometimes health is not the result of extraordinary willpower. It is the result of the environment around us. If you see a park every morning, you are more likely to take a walk. If healthy food is easily available, you are more likely to eat well. If the community is welcoming, you are more likely to maintain meaningful relationships. And from these seemingly small things, longevity is built day by day. This reminds us of one of the most important lessons taught by the world's famous longevity regions: Okinawa, Sardinia, Ikaria, Nicoya. None possesses a magical pill. None holds a supernatural secret. None discovered a formula for immortality. Yet they all share something in common. They create conditions where healthy living becomes a natural part of everyday life. Perhaps this is why modern longevity science is becoming more humble. Instead of searching for miracles, it is paying closer attention to ordinary things. Because ultimately, what extends life is rarely a single dramatic act. It is small actions repeated thousands of times over many years. If there is one lesson this entire journey wishes to leave behind, perhaps it is this: longevity does not come from one secret, not from a miraculous food, not from a magical pill, not from an expensive technology. Longevity is the result of simple choices: getting enough sleep, something that sounds ordinary but is incredibly powerful. During sleep, the brain organizes memories, the immune system is strengthened, cells are repaired, hormones are balanced. Sleep is like a silent maintenance crew working through the night without ever asking for recognition. Then there is movement, not necessarily marathons, not necessarily modern gyms, simply continuing to move, continuing to walk, continuing to use the body the way nature designed it. Walking, gardening, climbing stairs, stretching, small actions that accumulate over time, like quiet investments in the future. And then comes sensible eating, not a perfect diet, not strict rules, but balance, variety, moderation, a healthy relationship with food. Because food is not only fuel, it is biological information delivered to every cell. Yet the deeper scientists explore longevity, the more they realize that health does not exist solely within the body. It also exists within relationships. Human beings are social creatures. We are born to connect, to talk, to share, to love. Research increasingly shows that prolonged loneliness can be as harmful to health as some major physical risk factors. That is a remarkable thought, because it reminds us that the heart does not need only blood. It also needs connection, a sense of belonging, people we can call family. Whether that family is formed through blood or friendship, Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Perhaps these human connections are quietly extending our lives as well, not only emotionally, but biologically. And after all the research into genes, hormones, cells, microorganisms, and future technologies, one factor continues to purpose, a reason to get out of bed in the morning, something that makes tomorrow worth anticipating. It may be tending a small garden, playing with grandchildren, helping a community, creating art, or simply loving life itself. When people feel their lives have meaning, they often care for themselves better, persist longer, recover more effectively from hardship, and live longer. Perhaps this is where science and Jungian psychology meet, because ultimately, longevity is not only a story of the body, it is also a story of meaning. As the night grows quieter beyond the window, perhaps we begin to understand that the future of longevity does not exist entirely inside laboratories. It exists within each day we live, within every night's sleep, every step, every meal, every conversation, every moment of gratitude. And perhaps the greatest secret of longevity is not living a very long life, but living a very deep one, living long enough to love, long enough to learn, long enough to grow, and long enough to appreciate the simple beauty of being alive in this world. Because in the end, what matters most is not how many years we have, but how we live those years. Part 16. Why are we afraid of growing old? After completing this long journey through the mysteries of longevity, from genes and the world's famous longevity regions, to small but powerful habits and future technologies striving to extend youth, we begin to notice something fascinating. Most of what helps human beings live longer is not especially mysterious. Sleep well, move regularly, eat wisely, maintain meaningful relationships, live with purpose, manage stress, remain consistent over many years. These are all surprisingly simple things. And if the answer is so simple, why does aging continue to make us anxious? Why does the fear of growing old persist even in an age when life expectancy has risen dramatically? Why do millions still search for anti-aging creams, rejuvenation therapies, and secrets of eternal youth? And why have kings, philosophers, and alchemists spent thousands of years obsessed with extending youthfulness? Perhaps because what we truly fear is not wrinkles, not gray hair, not age itself, but what lies behind all of them: time, the endless flow of time, something no king can command to stop, no army can conquer, no invention can fully control. Jung once quoted the philosopher Heraclitus, "Time is a child playing a game, beautifully absorbed." The playing of a child. Time is like a child at play, not hurried, not cruel, not biased. It simply continues moving, and perhaps what unsettles us is realizing that time continues, whether we are ready or not. If we look back through human history, we find something nearly universal. Every civilization has imagined eternal youth. The ancient Greeks told stories of immortal gods atop Mount Olympus. Chinese tradition spoke of immortals living for thousands of years upon mystical mountains. European legends told of the fountain of youth. Across the world, similar stories appeared in countless forms. At first glance, these myths seem to be about youth, but at a deeper level, they speak about something profoundly human: the desire to escape limitation, the desire to preserve beauty, the desire to hold on to what we love. When people dream of a magical spring that keeps them forever young, they are not really talking about skin. They are talking about loss. The fear of losing health, the fear of losing loved ones, the fear of losing themselves, the fear of seeing the final chapters of life approaching in the distance. Jung believed many human fears do not arise from present circumstances. They arise from symbols buried deep within the unconscious. And aging may be one of the most powerful symbols of all, because it forces us to confront a question we often spend much of life avoiding. Our time is finite. In memories, dreams, reflections, Jung wrote, "The afternoon of life must also have a significance of its own, and cannot be merely a pitiful appendage to life's morning." Perhaps this is one of the most beautiful statements ever written about aging. Because Jung did not see old age as decline, he saw it as another stage of development, another chapter in the human journey. Yet modern society often tells a different story, a story in which youth is the peak, where younger is always better, where aging is loss, where every sign of time must be hidden. And that narrative can make people afraid, not because old age is inherently frightening, but because we have been taught to fear it. If you watch a child, you will notice they rarely think about age. They simply live, explore, wander, and remain present. But as adults, we begin counting time, 30 years old, 40, 50, 60, and suddenly one day we realize that time seems to be moving faster. As children, summers felt endless. A school year felt like an entire world. Yet as adults, the years begin accelerating. Spring arrives and disappears. A year begins and ends almost immediately. Children become adults before we realize it, and this creates a strange feeling many people experience. Not fear of aging, but fear of time. Fear that life is moving faster than we hoped. Fear that there is still so much left undone. Too many people left to love. Too many moments left to enjoy. Perhaps that is the true heart of the fear of aging. not the changing body, but the reminder that time is finite. And yet, paradoxically, that finiteness may be what gives life its value. If a flower bloomed forever, would we still find it beautiful? If summer never ended, would we still long for autumn? If life had no limits, would any moment feel precious? Perhaps it is no coincidence that so many philosophers, poets, and psychologists arrive at the same conclusion. The very thing that makes life precious is that it does not last forever. And perhaps the most beautiful task is not remaining forever in spring, but learning to love summer, appreciate autumn, and discover peace within the winter of life. Because ultimately, what people fear most is not old age, but the feeling that they have not truly lived. And when we begin living more deeply in the present, time no longer feels like an enemy. It becomes a storyteller, quietly transforming ordinary days into a life worth remembering. Part 17. What do centenarians say about happiness? Perhaps, after reflecting together on the fear of aging, after realizing that what unsettles us most is not wrinkles or gray hair, but the feeling that time is quietly slipping away too quickly, we arrive at another question, a gentler question, yet perhaps an even more important one. If someone truly lives a very long life, if someone has traveled almost the entire length of the human journey, if someone has witnessed more than a century pass by, what would they say about happiness? What stories would they tell us? What would they regret? What would they be grateful for? And what wisdom would they wish to share with those who are still walking the path they themselves have nearly completed? There is something special that happens when we listen to people who have lived beyond 100 years, not because they are perfect, not because they possess all the answers, but because they have had time to love, time to lose, time to make mistakes, time to learn, time to watch things that once seemed important gradually become small, and things that once seemed small become profoundly important. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Perhaps no one understands this more deeply than those who have lived through nearly the entire arc of human life. Because by the age of 100, most social masks have fallen away. Competitions have become distant. Races no longer matter as they once did. What often remains are simple truths that sometimes take an entire lifetime to discover. In interviews with centenarians across the world, from Japan and Italy to Costa Rica and the United States, one fascinating pattern emerges. They rarely speak about money, rarely about fame, rarely about status. That does not mean those things are meaningless, but when viewed from the end of the road, they no longer seem to occupy the center of life. Instead, other themes appear again and again: family, friends, health, ordinary moments, meals shared with loved ones, conversations, quiet afternoons, hugs, laughter, small things so ordinary that in our busy lives we often overlook them. One story comes from a woman over 100 years old in Okinawa. When asked about the secret to a long life, she did not mention vitamins. She did not mention medication. She did not describe a miraculous diet. She simply smiled and said that every morning she had a reason to get out of bed, a garden waiting to be tended, a friend waiting to be seen, a new day waiting to be welcomed. It sounds simple, yet the more we think about it, the deeper it becomes. Because happiness is not always an intense emotion, not always an explosion of joy. Sometimes it is simply the feeling that life still has meaning. Jung spent many years studying what he called individuation, the process of becoming oneself. He believed that the second half of life should not merely be an extension of youth. It should be a period in which people move closer to their authentic nature. Perhaps that is what we see in many long-lived individuals. They gradually learn to let go of what is unnecessary, to forgive, to accept, to simplify life. What is especially surprising is that when centenarians are asked about their greatest regrets, many offer remarkably similar answers. They rarely say, "I wish I had worked more." They rarely say, "I wish I had spent more time in the office." They rarely say, "I wish I had earned more money." Instead, their answers often sound very different. "I wish I had spent more time with my family. I wish I had worried less. I wish I had enjoyed life more. I wish I had expressed my love more often." This does not mean work is unimportant. Work provides purpose, contribution, growth. But in the end, what remains in human memory is usually not the emails we sent, not the meetings we attended, not the reports we completed. It is people, relationships, shared moments. Perhaps this is because the human brain is designed to remember emotions more vividly than achievements. When we look back on childhood, we rarely remember ordinary days. We remember feelings, an evening with family, the sound of laughter, a special trip, the feeling of being loved. And at the end of life, memory continues to work in much the same way. Another striking theme among centenarians is gratitude. Not gratitude for extraordinary things, but gratitude for ordinary things. A healthy day, a morning when they can still walk independently, a good meal, a phone call from someone they love, a ray of sunlight passing through a window. This may sound simple, yet it reflects a profound shift in perspective. When we are young, we often focus on what we do not have. As people grow older, many begin paying closer attention to what they still have. And perhaps that is one of the secrets of happiness, not possessing more, but seeing more clearly the value of what is already present. Jung once wrote, "Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness." This is especially true for those who have lived a very long time. They are not people who avoided suffering. On the contrary, many have endured war, loss, illness, separation, failure, pain. What makes them different is not the absence of hardship, it is how they respond to it. Not with lifelong bitterness, but with the ability to keep moving forward, to keep loving, to keep hoping, to keep finding beauty in life, despite knowing that life is imperfect. Perhaps that is why so many centenarians radiate a unique sense of peace. They are no longer trying to defeat time, no longer trying to control everything. They resemble people who have learned to swim with the river rather than against it. And when asked, what matters most, their answers return again and again to familiar themes: family, friends, health, gratitude, purpose. Not because they lack ambition, but because they have had enough time to discover what truly remains when the dust of life settles. And perhaps, as the night outside the window becomes quieter, we can ask ourselves a small question. If one day we look back upon our entire life, what will make us smile? Perhaps the answer is not hidden in distant achievements. Perhaps it is already present in the simple moments of today. A heartfelt conversation, a warm embrace, a word of thanks, a peaceful afternoon, someone we love. Because ultimately, what centenarians seem to offer us is not a secret for living longer, but a secret for living more deeply. And sometimes, that may be the most valuable lesson a century of life can teach. Part 18. Time in the Human Mind. After listening to the reflections of people who have lived for more than a century, after looking back with them upon lives filled with joy, loss, gratitude, and regret, another question begins to emerge. A strange question, yet a familiar one. Why do some periods of life seem endlessly long, while others pass so quickly that they leave us astonished? Why does childhood appear to stretch on forever, while adulthood feels like a train steadily gaining speed? Why does a summer seem as vast as an entire world when we are young, yet a year can pass like a gentle breeze when we are older? If longevity has been the theme of our entire journey, perhaps this is the moment to pause and ask something deeper. What truly measures a long life? The number of years on a calendar, or the way we experience time itself? Carl Gustav Jung spent much of his life contemplating the deeper layers of the human mind. And although he never developed a formal theory of time in the physical sense, much of his work revolved around one essential insight. Human beings do not live in the time of clocks. Human beings live in the time of the soul. There is one kind of time measured by a clock, A minute always contains 60 seconds. An hour always contains 60 minutes. A day always contains 24 hours. But there is another kind of time, the kind we feel. An hour spent with someone we love may disappear in an instant. An hour spent waiting anxiously for news may feel endless. A wonderful vacation seems to end too quickly. A sleepless night can feel like it lasts a century. This reveals something fascinating. Psychological time and clock time are not always the same. And perhaps if we wish to understand longevity in its deepest sense, we must understand both. Let us return for a moment to childhood, perhaps to a summer afternoon. You are sitting beneath a tree, watching clouds drift across the sky, listening to cicadas singing, smelling freshly cut grass. At that age, a day feels long. A week feels like an adventure. A school year feels like an enormous chapter of life. Why? Neuroscientists suggest that part of the answer lies in novelty. When we are children, almost everything is new. New roads, new friends, new skills, new discoveries. The brain must process enormous amounts of information. Countless memories are formed. And because memory becomes denser, those years seem longer when we look back. As adults, however, life gradually settles into familiar patterns. The same road to work, the same routines, the same schedules, the same repeated habits. The brain no longer needs to record so much new information. Days begin to blend together, and as a result, time appears to accelerate. It is one of life's strangest paradoxes. We do not actually lose time, but our experience of time changes. Jung might say that this has much to do with presence, because a life is shaped not only by what happens, but by how consciously we experience what happens. Jung once wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." Perhaps this is true of time as well. When we live entirely on autopilot, time moves quickly. But when we are fully present, time seems to expand. Think about the most memorable moments of your life. Your first day of school, your first love, a distant journey, the birth of a child, a meeting that changed your life, a particular afternoon that remains vivid even today. What do these moments have in common? We were fully present, fully awake, fully alive. And it is this presence that makes time feel richer. Modern research appears to support a similar conclusion. New experiences tend to slow our perception of time. Learning a new skill, exploring a new place, meeting new people, reading new books, all encourage the brain to create more memories. And memories are the building blocks of our experience of time. Without memory, time almost disappears. That is why a single week of travel can sometimes feel richer than months spent in repetition. Not because it is longer, but because it is denser, like a book filled with fascinating chapters, instead of hundreds of pages that look nearly the same. Perhaps this is one of the greatest secrets of longevity. A long life is not necessarily a life with more years. A long life may be a life filled with experience, presence, meaning, awakening. Jung believed that genuine human development is not about endlessly accumulating more things. It is about becoming more conscious. Conscious of ourselves, conscious of others, conscious of life itself. And perhaps as awareness deepens, our experience of time changes as well. Time no longer appears as an enemy stealing youth away, no longer as a clock constantly urging us forward, but as a river carrying us through the seasons of life. Some stretches flow quickly, some move slowly, some contain unexpected turns, some are calm and still, yet all are part of the journey. When we are young, we often think we need more time. As we grow older, we begin to realize that what we truly need is not more time, but more presence, more moments of awakening, more moments of genuinely living. Because in the end, the richness of a life is measured not by the number of years, but by how fully we inhabited those years. And perhaps, as the night grows quieter, as your breathing becomes slower, and as your thoughts begin to settle, this is an idea worth carrying into sleep. That time does not exist only on clocks. It exists in memory, in attention, in love, in conversations, in peaceful afternoons, in moments when we are truly alive. And perhaps the longest life is not the one with the most years, but the one with the most fully lived moments. Part 19. The True Secret of Longevity. After traveling together through the long journey of exploring time within the human mind, after realizing that a life is measured not only by the number of years we have lived, but also by the depth of our presence in each moment, we are now approaching the final question, a question that has quietly accompanied us since the very beginning of this video, a question that stands behind every study of longevity, behind every laboratory, behind every scientific breakthrough, behind every story of centenarians, behind every emperor's dream of immortality, and behind every human fear of time itself. It is the question, what is the true secret of longevity? After spending hours exploring genes, the cardiovascular system, sleep, nutrition, movement, the brain, the immune system, the world's longevity hotspots, people who have lived beyond a century, and even the most advanced discoveries of modern science, many of us may expect a remarkable answer, a hidden secret, a magical formula, a shocking discovery, a pill capable of changing everything. But the fascinating thing is this: the answer that science is gradually moving toward is surprisingly simple. So simple that we often overlook it. Because the true secret of longevity may not be a secret at all. It is ordinary things, small things, repeated things, things so familiar that we often assume they cannot possibly matter very much. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "We are what we do, not what we say we'll do." Perhaps longevity follows the same principle. It is not determined by grand intentions. It is built through small actions, repeated again and again, day after day, year after year. When we are young, we are often attracted to quick solutions, a miracle diet, a secret method, a revolutionary technique, a breakthrough technology, because the human mind loves dramatic stories, spectacular discoveries, miracles. But the body operates differently. It is not transformed by rare actions. It is transformed by repeated ones, like a small stream slowly carving through stone over many years, like a seed growing little by little each day, like a tree that never becomes tall overnight. Longevity is built through accumulation, not through explosive moments, but through thousands of tiny choices: a good night's sleep, a balanced meal, a short walk, a glass of water, a laugh, a conversation, a moment of rest, a decision not to smoke, a routine health check, one small thing at a time, quiet, ordinary, consistent, and it is that consistency that creates the miracle. If we look at the longest-lived people in the world, we find a remarkable pattern. They do not live through extraordinary victories. They live through ordinary habits. Not every day is perfect. Not every day is healthy. Not every day is happy. Yet they continually return to the fundamentals. They continue caring for their bodies. They continue caring for their relationships. They continue caring for their souls. Like a gardener, adding a little water each day, pulling a few weeds, waiting patiently, and one day the garden becomes beautiful. Not because of one grand act, but because of thousands of small ones. This reminds us of a beautiful idea in Jungian psychology. Jung believed that human growth does not happen through giant leaps. It happens through the slow accumulation of awareness. Today we understand a little more. Tomorrow we mature a little more. The next day we become a little more peaceful. And after many years, we become a completely different person. Not because of a single event, but because of countless small changes. Perhaps longevity works in much the same way. A long life is not built upon one great secret. It is built upon millions of tiny details. And strangely enough, those tiny details rarely make headlines. No one writes articles about someone who goes to bed on time for 30 years. No one makes documentaries about a person who takes a daily walk. No one considers these things spectacular. Yet those unspectacular actions are quietly shaping our future health. Jung once said, "The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it." Perhaps there is no better quote for reflecting upon longevity, because small, meaningful actions are often more powerful than grand efforts that cannot be sustained. A 15-minute walk every day for 10 years may be worth far more than a month of extreme training, followed by giving up. Regular sleep maintained for years may matter more than complicated solutions that never last. A warm conversation with a friend each week may prove more valuable than many things we commonly assume are important. And when we look back upon this entire journey, perhaps we begin to realize that longevity is not merely a scientific project. It is an art of living, an art composed of very ordinary choices: sleeping well, eating wisely, moving regularly, maintaining healthy blood pressure, avoiding tobacco, keeping vaccinations up to date, nurturing relationships, learning, loving, forgiving, practicing gratitude, living with purpose. None of these sound like miracles, yet when combined over decades, they create something very close to the greatest miracle science has ever observed: a healthy life, a long life, a meaningful life. And this allows us to see longevity from a different perspective. Perhaps the goal is not to extend life at any cost. Perhaps the goal is to enrich the years we already have, because ultimately, what matters is not only living longer, but living deeper, with awareness, with presence, with love, with experience, with gratitude, so that when we look back, we feel those years were truly lived. And perhaps that is the true secret of longevity. Not an invention, not a medicine, not a technology, but the harmony of countless small things: tonight's sleep, tomorrow's meal, a morning walk, a call to a loved one, a smile, a peaceful moment, one ordinary day, then another, and another, until those ordinary days quietly connect together and become an extraordinary life. And perhaps this is where we begin stepping into the final chapter of our journey, no longer asking how to live longer, but asking a far more beautiful question: how do we truly live? And so, we have reached the end of a very long journey together, a journey that began with questions about longevity, about genes, about the body, about health, about people who lived beyond 100 years, about anti-aging science, about time, and ultimately, about life itself. Perhaps when we first began this video, many of us thought longevity was simply a story about years, a biological equation, a medical subject. But the deeper we traveled, the more we discovered that longevity is truly a story about how we live. Because a long life is measured not only by time, but by depth, by memories, by relationships, by what we have loved, by what we have experienced, and by the moments in which we were fully present. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Perhaps that is the most important journey of all. Not living as long as possible, but living long enough to understand ourselves, long enough to mature, long enough to forgive, long enough to love, long enough to discover what truly matters. Throughout today's journey, we met some of the world's longest-lived people. We explored cutting-edge scientific research. We looked inside cells. We visited the famous longevity regions of the world. We listened to the reflections of those who have lived for more than a century. And the remarkable thing is this: all of those paths seem to lead to the same place, a very simple place. The understanding that a good life is not built from extraordinary things. It is built from ordinary things, repeated with love and consistency. A good night's sleep, a healthy meal, a walk, a hug, a conversation, a laugh, a peaceful afternoon, a word of gratitude, a moment of appreciation. These things may seem small, but added together over many years, they become a life. Perhaps that is why centenarians rarely say they wish they had worked more, rarely say they wish they had owned more. Instead, they remember people, they remember family, they remember friends, they remember simple moments, because in the end, what remains in the human heart is not what we accumulated, but what we shared. And perhaps, as the night outside your window becomes quieter, this is the moment to gently set down your worries. You do not need to solve everything today. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to know every answer. You do not need to transform your entire life overnight. Just one small step, one slightly healthier habit, one wiser choice, one little act of kindness toward yourself. Because longevity, like happiness, is not created in a single day. It is created little by little. Just as sunrise does not appear in a single instant, but slowly spreads light across the sky. If there is one message this entire journey hopes to leave with you, perhaps it is this: do not become overly concerned with living a very long life. Become concerned with living a very deep life. Take care of your body, but do not forget to care for your soul. Think about the years ahead, but do not miss today. Plan for the future, but do not forget to enjoy the present, because the present is where life is happening, right now, in this moment, in this breath, and perhaps many years from now, when you look back on your life, what makes you smile will not be the grand achievements, but the peaceful mornings, the friends you met, the people you loved, the small acts of goodness you offered to the world. Perhaps that is the most beautiful form of longevity, not simply living longer, but leaving more love behind wherever your journey takes you. And now, as our story gently comes to an end, as your thoughts begin to settle, as the night becomes softer, allow your body to rest, allow your eyes to relax, allow your mind to slow down, and remember, you do not need to outrun time. You only need to walk alongside it, one day at a time, one season at a time, 1 year at a time, with peace, with fullness. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the most fascinating truths about longevity. If you enjoy these gentle explorations of the human mind, science, philosophy, and the profound insights of Carl Gustav Jung designed to help you relax before sleep, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss our future journeys. Each week, we will continue exploring new mysteries of life, the soul, and the human experience together. But for now, let every thought drift away. Let the night embrace you with peace. May you sleep deeply, may you sleep gently, and may tomorrow morning greet you with renewed energy, renewed hope, and renewed gratitude. Good night, and I will see you again in the next story.